I'm here today with Justin Jones, man, all the way up in Minnesota from Tennessee. What brings you up here?
We're here for Farm Aid, brother. Really excited to support our family farmers, seeing the power of music. I come from Music City. I'm also serving on the Agriculture Committee, and so I'm trying to get represent young farmers, particularly young farmers of color, and be a voice so that we can remove some of these barriers our farmers are facing and the chaos in our economy that's impacting farms all across my state and across this country.
Obviously, with farming, there's a lot of big money and corporate money in that, and that is part of what sets up those obstacles. What can people be doing like you who operate on the state level to kind of remove some of those obstacles and help new farmers get in and help family farms stay in business under all that pressure?
Yeah, I mean, we're building coalitions in our state to take on corporate power. So just this session, we were able to work with mostly Republican farmers and take on Bayer and Monsanto, where they had a bill to give immunity to these pesticide corporations and at the expense of the health and well-being of our farmers. And so we were able to fight back against this corporate power, looking at things like the right to repair bill so that farmers have the right to repair their own farm equipment, taking on the monopolies of John Deere. We know that this is really about building populism. That's what this is really about. And I think that farming and agriculture is that key policy where we can take on corporate power and look at a multiracial, multi-generational coalition to do that. And so I'm really excited what we can do at the state level, because we know at the federal level, nothing is getting done that serves everyday people. It's all about serving corporate overlords and bowing down to special interests. But at the state level, hopefully, we can be voices to fight for our people because we're closer to them. We live, I'm in Nashville. We live with our folks. We're not going, out of state to go do the work, but we're in the community, and our farmers can show up and testify in our committees and be a part of the process, and they are. And we also, it's exciting to hopefully see more farmers running for office to vote some of these folks out who are not serving the interests of everyday people.
I think that that's really something we need to be focusing on, especially with right to repair and the monopolies like John Deere, big agricultural equipment. Unions are really important, even though they're not always tied to farms directly. Economic populism is tied to all of us, especially in your state. Fighting for unions is incredibly difficult. Right to work state, correct?
Right to work, yeah. Right to work for less.
Yeah, right to work for less. So how have you been trying to fight for worker protections in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee has had some amazing wins. Just last year, I was in Chattanooga when the UAW they unionized the first Southern auto plant since the 1950s. I mean, we're seeing labor power really continue to grow. I come from a union family. My mom, my family are all in the nurses union, working class family. And so I think, we're continuing to see the power of workers, the power of the people. And we know that the strategy of divide and conquer is nothing new. I call it plantation politics, and that's what we're seeing, where they're trying to use things like racism or homophobia or Islamophobia to try and divide working class people. But we know that the 1% that we should be focused on are the folks who are exploiting the folks who live in our communities, the working class who will build our cities and build our communities. So right now, I'm fighting against Elon Musk, who's trying to build a tunnel through my district without consulting the people who work there. And it's not going to serve working class people. It's going to serve tourists and special interest groups. And so we've been fighting against that with his Tesla tunnel that he's trying to build through my district. But too often we see people bow down to these corporate, or techno autocrats, whatever we want to call them. And I think it's a very dangerous time as we look at the trajectory of where our nation is headed.
And I think one of the things that people are starting to feel, but you are one of the canaries in the coal mine for, is activism and speaking out is incredibly important in making these changes. And obviously they're trying to silence us. We've seen a huge assault on the First Amendment, and you were a subject to that, obviously, right after you got elected, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we were just there 3 months before we got expelled. So.
And so you got expelled. Obviously, you got reinstated, but that seemed very racially charged. Now that we're seeing private citizens kind of facing that same type of restrictions, what can people do to resist this assault on the First Amendment? What can they do to fight? What have you seen that's been effective in making sure that you can't be silenced in the way that they're trying to silence all of us now?
Yeah, I mean, the solution and what I see in my state that is an antidote to this authoritarianism is solidarity. Like, people who have the privilege to be able to speak up should be doing it more. The people who have the privilege of citizenship to put their bodies on the line when they're coming after our immigrant brothers and sisters, do that. We must find ways to get in good trouble to our democracy requires disruption sometimes. And so I think, recognizing that the more that they also try and silence people, the more that you can be convinced that what you're doing is effective, because they wouldn't try and silence people who are ineffective. They wouldn't try and silence people who are not a threat to their power. And what we're dealing with are some very fragile old racist white men who are very fragile in their power. And it shows that how weak they are, that even a comedian will threaten them, that they have to get rid of a comedian because they're so threatened by that. Or they have to get rid of, a professor who tweeted something, because they have a different viewpoint. I mean, that's what we're seeing a lot in our state. Tennessee has one of the most restrictive book bans laws, and one of the most restrictive anti-quote-unquote divisive concept laws, where we cannot teach about history, racial history. They don't want to teach about slavery. They want to teach about it as if people were workers and volunteered for this, when we know that's not the truth. And so I think, the more that we can tell our stories, the more that we can find spaces like this. Last night I was at an event uplifting BIPOC farmers, Black Indigenous farmers, specifically supporting those groups, because so long in our country, Black farmers in particular, 100 years ago we had 15% Black farmers in this nation. Now it's less than 1%. And that's because of racial terrorism. That's because of lack of access to the same grants. That's lack of access to resources, lack of access to land. And we just met with some farmers here in Minnesota yesterday who are Kenyan refugees. They came here, and one of their biggest barriers, they said, is racism of people wanting to sell land to them because they have stereotypes about them. We have to address that. And I do believe that we need to look at, what does it look like to build cooperative models? What does it look like to really, look at government giving land back to tribes? Some of these things, land back. We need to have real conversations about this, particularly in this time of climate catastrophe and chaos that we're facing.
No, and I think that is an important thing that ties back to the history of states, especially like Tennessee, that don't want to teach that history about slavery and how it went from 15% of African American or farmers being African American. They had that institutional knowledge coming out of slavery that allowed them to be successful on their own for the first time. And we've taken that back, we saying straight white men, unfortunately. And so I think it's really important, the work that you're doing, standing up, and I hope that people like me can help elevate that message. And I really appreciate the fact that you're willing to put your face and your life out on the line to do the work that you're doing. It means a lot for our country and our democracy, and anything we can do to help is here.
We'll push together, and we also are both horseback riders.
Absolutely. So. Hey, congratulations. This man just got a brand new horse here, a Mustang. You've been riding for a couple of years.
Yeah.
We'll side content. What got you into riding? What made you decide to get literally in the saddle?
Yeah, when you're with the horse, everything else turns off. All the chaos. You just spend time grooming. That's always that connection. And then when you're on the horse, all that technology turn off. And I think that's so important this time. So maybe we can organize a protest where we go down to DC and get a whole bunch of people on horseback. And
I am down for that.
Do something like that.
I am down. A little cowboy protest down there. I'd be up for it.
I think we need to find creative ways to get our message out.
Absolutely.
And especially with farmers hurting so much right now. Like, imagine a caravan of people on horseback, tractors surrounding, going around the Capitol. I think that could be a powerful idea.
Look at the French. They were doing it. I think we should pick up after them. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's really exciting. Obviously, millennial representation in any aspect of politics is very low. So seeing young people our age get involved is really inspirational. And again, appreciate all the work that you're doing. It is absolutely important, and it's going recognized all around the country.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.